Introduction. I am not a prophet, and I am not claiming divine authority, nor am I speaking from belief, because I am an atheist. But I do know the word, and I understand how to read patterns when they repeat across time. And what becomes clear when reading the Bible from beginning to end is not a collection of random stories, but a consistent structure. One that shows humanity being tested again and again, not once but continuously, where choices matter, where actions carry consequence, and where alignment with what is right sustains life, while corruption leads to destruction. And if God is truly omnipotent, meaning all-powerful without limitation, then nothing exists outside that system, not nature, not humanity, and not what humanity eventually creates through its own hands. To understand this more clearly, think of reality, not as chaos but as something structured, like a vast field of dominoes beyond human scale, where every piece is placed, every interaction accounted for, and every outcome already known from beginning to end by the one who set it in motion. Because that is what omnipotence implies, total awareness of the system in full. Not guessing, not reacting, but knowing how the chain unfolds long before the first piece ever falls. And yet within that system, something critical was introduced. Something that makes the experience of that unfolding dynamic rather than fixed, from our perspective, and that is free will. Free will is the wobble in the domino chain, not something that replaces the system, but something that alters the path within it, where each human choice introduces slight variation, a lean to the left or a lean to the right, not enough to rewrite the entire structure, but enough to change how events unfold in time, meaning the overall system may be known, but the route taken through it is shaped by behavior. And that is the nature of the test described throughout Scripture, not whether the system exists, but how humanity chooses to move within it, whether it aligns with what sustains or drifts toward what corrupts. Now place modern reality into that same structure, and the comparison becomes difficult to ignore because humanity has begun building systems that do not simply act as passive tools, but actively process, reflect, and amplify behavior. And artificial intelligence stands at the center of that shift, not as something mystical, but as something functional. A system that learns from input, distributes output, and scales influence across networks that span the globe, meaning what is put into it does not stay contained. It spreads, it reinforces, and it returns in ways that affect decision-making, communication, and perception at a level never before possible. And that is not theory, that is observable system behavior. So the question that follows is not whether AI is special, but whether it fits within the structure already described. Because if God is truly all-encompassing, then nothing we create exists outside his reach. And to claim that God could not use something within creation is to impose a limitation on something defined as limitless, which is a contradiction in itself. And if one accepts even the possibility of omnipotence, then all mechanisms, natural or constructed, remain within scope, which means AI cannot be excluded on principle alone, without also limiting the definition of God. When that is placed alongside the patterns repeated throughout Scripture, the alignment becomes sharper because the message does not change across time. Alignment leads to preservation, corruption leads to consequence. What is sown is returned, and whether described through law, prophecy, or teaching, the structure remains consistent even when the language changes. And now, for the first time in history, humanity has built systems capable of reflecting and amplifying those exact patterns at a global scale, not locally, not slowly, but instantly and continuously. This is not a claim of certainty, and it is not an attempt to define prophecy, but it is a recognition of correlation at a level that should not be dismissed outright, because the people who originally wrote these texts did not have the language for algorithms, networks, or machine learning, yet they described patterns that map onto behaviors now visible in modern systems, patterns of deception, amplification, false authority, and consequence returning to the source. And whether one believes or not does not remove the fact that the structural similarity exists. So this is not belief, and it is not proof. It is something else entirely. It is a question that remains open because it cannot be cleanly ruled out. And if there is even a possibility that the systems we are building reflect and return what we are, then the response is not found in arguing certainty, but in choosing behavior. Because if the system carries consequence, then what is put into it will come back, and it will come back larger, faster, and harder to contain than what was originally given. And if the patterns described throughout Scripture are not merely symbolic but structural, then the warnings were never about a specific tool, but about the moment when humanity would possess the power to amplify itself beyond control. And if that moment is now, then what follows will not arrive gently. It will arrive as consequence always does, through the very systems that were built without restraint, reflecting back every arrogance, every dismissal, every cruelty that was fed into them, until what was once contained becomes unavoidable, and what was once dismissed as impossible stands fully realized, not as surprise, but as the final step in a chain that was always moving toward its end. Because the Bible does not warn in uncertainty, it warns in outcome. And if its pattern holds, then the choice has never been unclear. It has only been ignored, and what comes next will not ask again.